Welcome, everyone, to the Apoco-Larry podcast. I'm Steve. He is...
Dr. Van Beek.
Dr. Van Beek. No, that's right. I was supposed to keep talking there. So good doctor. We talked about a lot of things that we could do. Like we said, hey, we could do Esther. We could do a book out of the New Testament. But we're going to do something slightly different. And I think it's really, really valuable. We're going to talk about the Inter-Testamental Period in the books, right?
Sort of, yes. Yes, we are.
And you wanted me to even mention that the Sumerians actually had some books too, right?
No, I didn't find anything that the Samaritans actually had.
Okay.
Remember when we were doing Ezra and Nehemiah? They mentioned some of the books that the Jewish people had.
Yes, you said that. I'm sorry.
Judah at that time. And we said, what about the Samaritans? You had said that. And I said, I'm not sure. And I looked back and I didn't see anything that was particular to the Samaritans that we still have today.
Okay.
Right? And a lot of the books that the Jewish people have, remember they'll say, if you want to read more about this, it's in the Annals of the Kings.
Right.
And things like that. And we don't have any of those books.
Yeah.
And then, so you were saying, what kind of books were around? And then you said in the Inter-Testamental Period. Yeah. So the Inter-Testamental Period, for our audience, is the period between Malachi.
Okay.
So the end of Ezra and Nehemiah. So just past that. So 400 BC. Down to the beginning of Jesus. So that's 4 BC, or you could say 180 or 33 AD.
Yeah.
You could do that in there, because there wasn't anything written until after Jesus died. So that's about the 400-year period that your Bible teachers would call the 400 silent years.
Yeah.
And every one of them will call it the 400 silent years, then say they were anything but silent. There's a lot of stuff going on. And this is also the period that we call Second Temple Period. Now, Second Temple Period is 530. So when Zerubbabel rebuilds the temple, it's 530 down to about AD 70.
When the destruction
so when
the Romans destroyed the temple, right?
Yes, till the Romans destroyed Herod's temple.
Okay.
Yeah. And so it's a little longer than the Intertestamental Period, but they're pretty much, synonymous in many, many ways. And we had mentioned that there were quite a number of books written during that time. Not books that entered our Bible, but some of them were in the Catholic Bible, right? And other books, and even if you went to, we were just talking about the Iliad and the Odyssey, and I had thought they were written about 400, but you just checked, and they were written about in the 700s,
right, in
the 8th century.
Yeah.
So they were written even before the Assyrian captivity, when Israel and Judah were still a divided kingdom. That's all that was going on in Greece over at that time.
Right.
So when you read the books of the Bible, you often think that they're their own thing. It's easy because of the way we treat the Bible and the way we treat Jesus and the way we treat even the Old Testament prophets and stuff. We treat them as their own cosmic thing.
Like they stand on an island or something like that.
Yeah, that they're their own planet, that they're their own island, that they're their own thing, that nothing else was happening in the world when this was going on, right? Except because that's how we study it.
Yes.
We study it separate from the rest. Where China was doing big stuff during this period of time.
Right.
And Persia, of course, as we learned in Ezra and Nehemiah, and Babylon was doing stuff. And if you could come over to North America, you'd probably find out there was lots of stuff going on in North America too. So there was stuff going on around them. And actually, when it comes to the history of the world, they were very insignificant. The whole thing was kind of insignificant as far as what was going on in the world around them.
Right.
And yet completely significant. I better throw that in so we don't lose our audience. Completely significant to Christians and Jews.
Right.
And God, we believe, was was making all of these pieces work together.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
is kind of interesting, isn't it?
It really is because, like you said, I've heard many people say to me, "Oh, these are the silent years," but back then people were saying it and literally meant they were the silent years. Well, no, God was pretty much silent to His people, and I'm thinking, I'm pretty sure something was happening.
Tons and tons of stuff was
Things.
happening, and there was a lot of theology being developed during this period of time.
Mm,
So let's go back to Israel and in that little 160 mile long piece of land,
hmm.
from the top of what the Sea of Galilee down to the bottom of the Dead Sea.
Right.
It's about 160 miles,
Okay.
300 kilometers, 1,600 stadia.
Oh. Oh, look at you
Yeah,
go.
look at me, look at me. Just because in Revelation they talk about the blood running for 1,600 stadia, which is from the top of Israel to the bottom.
Oh.
That's how come we know that kind of stuff. But during the period after Ezra, Nehemiah, after and Malachi would have been the last prophet in the Protestant Bible. Not much happened as far as our Bible goes until the end. However, um, we have many many books that were written during that period of time, and angelology was really heavily developed in what we call the Intertestamental Period.
Mm, mm.
So we have our angels. We have Michael and Gabriel.
Right.
Is that it?
And then there's that, like you always reference in Revelation, that, hey, could you throw that guy in the pit there? Some angel was walking
Well, yeah,
by.
the angel. Yeah, yeah. He didn't even get a name. He was he was quite upset about that actually, but
That's
he
right.
didn't want to say anything because he didn't want to end up in the pit with everybody else.
That's right.
But yeah, but in the intertestamental period, you've got you got Tobias and of course in Enoch you've got all of the angels, Uriel and I want to say Ariel, but I'm wondering if that's the Littlest Mermaid. You can get them all mixed up.
Yeah, it doesn't take
Um,
much.
yeah, yeah, and so you've got all of these different angels in that period that are being developed, and they're showing up in the books that were written during that time, and that's what we were just gonna say. So beyond our Bible, there were many many books written. So even and the first group, so I had these groups, and I was gonna say, so I've got the lost books of the Bible, and these, yeah, they weren't really lost. I This was just a marketing ploy, and these are a whole bunch of books that were written in the second, third century AD.
Mm,
Like they have the Mary, they have the Proto-Evangelion, infancy accounts, the Apostles' Creed, which we know. Remember,
right.
we believe in the Apostles' Creed's actually very small.
Yeah.
It gets a lot of play, but there's not much to it. And then Clement and
Mm,
Barnabas and another book of Ephesians and a book of Romans, and then they have all of these books that were written in this. This is New Testament time. Then they had a whole series of books called the Nag Hammadi Library,
mm.
and they are the Gnostic Gospels.
Oh, like the Gospel of Thomas or something like that.
The Gospel of Thomas is the one that people know.
Oh,
That's an excellent choice. Yeah, so they have this whole series of Gospels. It's called Nag Hammadi Library because it was found in the Nag Hammadi region around the same time as the Dead Sea Scrolls. It just
oh.
didn't get the play that the Dead Sea Scrolls got.
Okay. Okay.
And so the Gospel of Thomas, one of the cool things in the Gospel of Thomas is that they say Thomas was Jesus' twin because his
Uh,
name was Thomas Didymus, right? And Didymus kind of means twin. And he looked a lot like Jesus. Some people thought, and so they said, well, he was actually Jesus' twin, and so so by the 300s, we laugh at this, but the Egyptian the Egyptian Gnostics thought it was quite important.
yeah. Hey, that sounds cool. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The frog did it.
If you get that reference, folks, email us.
Yeah. So that's the Nag Hammadi library. But the one that I was going to concentrate on actually was the Apocrypha,
Mm,
and most of us have heard the term Apocrypha.
yes.
And oh, I forgot who it was. Ah, forgot who it was that came up with the term apocrypha. I had it, but it doesn't matter. Apocrypha means the hidden books.
Hmm. Hmm.
And up until about the time of Origin, some of the Apocrypha was accepted as canon.
Oh, okay.
And Origin is about, late second century, third century AD.
Okay. But not quite at the
Um,
council at Nicaea, just a little before the council, that kind of thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so some of these books, um, people don't accept at all. But some of them were accepted by the church on and off. So Maccabees was and all of them were accepted by the Catholic Church all the way up through.
Hmm.
So I've got this book called they're called the Apocrypha or the Deuterocanonicals.
Okay.
So Deuterocanonical means second canon,
Hmm.
right? And in the Catholic Bible, they're just in the Bible. And so here are the books. You got Tobit and Judith, the additions to Esther, the Wisdom of Solomon, Ecclesiasticus, Baruch, the letter of Jeremiah, the additions to Daniel, the prayer of Azariah, and the song of the three Jews. I think it's the three Hebrew children in a different version. And then there's Susanna and Bell and the Dragon and First Maccabees and Second Maccabees. And Susanna, I mean, they made that great song about her.
Yeah. Are
Yeah,
we?
oh
Are we?
Susanna.
Oh, okay. I thought that was like a Toto song or something like
Oh, there's Susanna, Susanna. No, I was thinking, oh, Susanna. Oh, I'm much older than you, Steve. Oh, don't you cry for me. Uh, I've been to Daniel with my baby on my knee. So that was the story of Daniel and the women.
right.
And then Bell and the Dragon is actually the story of Daniel when he's thrown into the pit.
Oh, okay.
Because he is Bell and the lions are the dragon.
Hmm.
So that's kind of neat. And then First Esdras, the prayer of Manasseh, Psalm 151, Third Maccabees, and Second Esdras, and then Fourth Maccabees. I forgot how many there were. I thought there were 12 or 13 of these. I should have counted them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then if we count these other ones, it's 13, 14, 15, 16,
Hmm.
17. But I really always thought there was mainly the main ones were 12.
Okay.
12. And they were written anywhere from, what they say, third century, around 250,
Okay.
right up to the end of the first century.
Okay.
So these would have all been in the Second Temple period that they were written. And Maccabees, as you know, when we were reading earlier on, I guess around Christmas, we were talking about Maccabees. The Maccabean period is actually the only period that the Jewish people had owned their land again
Hmm. Mm-hmm.
in all of the history from the exile even to today, till 48 anyway. The Maccabean period was just that little period that the Jewish people owned their own land.
Hmm.
They had taken it back over, and the people, the Seleucids,
Mm-hmm.
which were the people from around Syria, they had taken over Jerusalem, but they were busy in other wars. I think they were busy with Egypt, and they were busy north of themselves as well, and so that kind of they ascribe it all to God, but it kind of left the Maccabeans, the Hasmonean kingdom,
Mm-hmm.
a chance to rule, right?
Okay.
And that's all in the Deuterocanonicals.
Hmm. Hmm.
So there's somewhere between 12 and 17, like parts of books or books in those Deuterocanonicals that the Catholics counted as part of their canon.
Hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Now I think even the Catholics treat it as a second canon, and
Okay.
some of the books they ascribe a little less, authority to than others. And the Dutch Reform with these books, this particular set of books, the Dutch Reform put them in their Bible, but they put them between the Old and the New Testament.
Okay.
They don't intersperse them amongst it.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, for them they're just books to be read.
Now, do the
Yeah,
Catholics actually place them in sequence where they should be,
I think
sort
they
of?
do. I think they put them throughout. They're not just in a clump in the middle. But I'd have to go and double check that. But I was pretty sure the last time that that's what I saw.
Okay.
But anyway, they treat them as part of their Bible. They treat them as authoritative. The Dutch Reform didn't treat them as authoritative. They just treated them as other good books to be read.
Hmm.
And some of the Christians thought these were for high end Christians. Almost like these are the books for the wise,
Mm.
which is interesting because the Essenes, the Essenes from the first century.
Mm-hmm.
So remember, the Jews had four parties, and there's a lot of argument about whether there were four, whether there were five, whether there were any.
Mm-hmm.
And people will argue all of that. But the four parties were generally the Sadducees, the Pharisees, the Essenes, and the Zealots.
Mm. Mm.
Those are the four that we're usually taught, right?
Yep.
So the Zealots were the killers.
Yep.
And if you watch The Chosen, they do a great job of Simon Zelotes. He's fantastic. And the Pharisees were the ones that everybody really, really had the ear of the people. The Sadducees up until AD 70 had the ear of Rome, and they were the politicians,
Okay.
right? And they only accepted the first four books. And then the Essenes. And the Essenes were the guys from the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Right.
They lived down in that area, and they came up, and they were in other areas as well. But that's the main area that we know them from.
Mm.
And where the Sadducees only accepted 5 books, the Pharisees accepted 22 books, which is the same as our Old Testament. Their 22 books is the same as our 66 books.
Okay.
Yeah, because our 12 minor prophets are just part of the prophets for
Yeah,
them.
just squished
Right?
together. Yeah, I go with you.
Yeah, stuff like that. And the Essenes, they accepted the 22 books and then another 70 books, I think.
Oh, wow.
But
They went to
yeah,
town.
yeah,
Sure. Who's got a book?
yeah.
Bring it
And they
in.
talk about it 22 for the unwise and the 70 for the wise.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so they had a whole pile of other books like fourth Esdras, fourth, um, you know, um, and books like that they used. So
Mm.
they had all of these different books that they used
Okay.
in the New Testament era, right? And a lot of those books are found in the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Mm.
Yeah,
That's
so it's kind of neat. It's
it
kind of neat.
is.
So if you look at that, I mean, in the New Testament, like there's upwards of 100 books that are historical to the time,
Mm-hmm.
but they didn't make it into our Bible.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah, and then the other set of books the Dead Sea Scrolls, of course. Now, when you have the Dead Sea Scrolls, you'll see stuff like 4Q MMT and 11Q7 or something like that. So the first number is the cave that they found it in.
Okay.
So the Dead Sea Scrolls were all found in these caves in the Dead Sea region. You know how the story goes, right?
Wasn't it a boy
That
throwing rocks into the
Yeah,
to
a
the
little
cave?
boy throwing rocks or shooting a slingshot, and he heard a cracking sound. And when they went up there, they found the clay pot, Dead Sea Tupperware,
Yeah.
still fresh. If you remember Robin Williams, he found this clay pot with these scrolls in it, and they're anywhere from a piece of a verse, part of a verse to a whole scroll. Like I think they had most of the Isaiah scroll in one of them.
Okay.
Yeah, and they again are anywhere from 250 to the first century AD as well.
Okay. Right. So very old, really, when you think about it.
Very old, very very old, and that they lasted is almost miraculous.
And didn't we find even in those translations they were very similar to what we were holding on to today too, right?
Interestingly, some of them line up, 1,000 years from the versions we have, and they line up with our versions, which thrill us. And we talk about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
We don't talk about the ones that don't. We only talk about the ones that do, which is very interesting, right? And oddly enough, some of the Dead Sea Scrolls line up with the Masoretic text, and some of the Dead Sea Scrolls line up with the Septuagint,
Ooh.
which is kind of interesting, which is what Craig Evans and those guys love, right?
Yeah.
They love that stuff.
And
And then they have the Copper.
and sorry for our listeners, the Septuagint was the Greek translation of the Old Testament, right?
Right. So the Septuagint is the Greek Old Testament, and it comes from mid-second century. And I kept saying that was 250, but mid-second century is actually 150 BC. So, and the story of the Septuagint, it's called the Septuagint, or the 70, because the story goes that 6 scholars from every one of the 12 tribes, so that's 72, they all translated on their own, the whole Old Testament into Greek, and then when they brought it together, it all lined up perfectly. So that's the story.
Oh, they had to go with some sort of inspirational type thing, eh?
Yeah, they're as dumb as the rest of us, really. We're all that way a little bit. And then they have the letter of Aristeas is the one that talks about all of this stuff. Yeah, but interestingly enough, some of our New Testament lines up with the Masoretic text, which is the Jewish. So the Masoretes, they were the ones who meticulously copied the Old Testament, and the idea was they would actually count up the letters from one side to the other to make sure that they were doing it exactly right.
I get you.
So that's the story of the Masoretes. I don't think they did that either, but they're just a bunch of drunken scribes sitting there.
1, 2, 3. Oh, I forgot. 1, 2, 3. It's
Yeah.
close enough. It's close enough. It's close.
It's close. It's close. Yeah. There's actually one of the scribes. This is a New Testament document where, in the margin, he writes, "Praise be to Jesus. The book is finished." So they would copy this stuff out. But anyway, so the in the Dead Sea Scrolls, then, in these scrolls that they found documents that were particular to the Essene people. Like they were, they talk about the teacher of righteousness and all that, and people line that up with Jesus. But later on, they stopped doing that. They said, no, it's not. It wasn't a prophecy of Jesus. It was just they have this teacher of righteousness because he's righteous. I mean, he's similar to what Jesus was.
Right.
So it was more of a coincidental type of a thing. But so they had their stuff that their community followed, their community rules and laws. And then they had about a half of the Dead Sea Scrolls are actually scripture, and that's where there's a lot of evidence. Like the evidence for biblical integrity is, in many ways, is way stronger than the integrity of any other book.
Yep.
Yes. Even like Homer's Iliad and the Odyssey. What the original was like, we don't really know. They don't have really good scribal copies to follow. Like they don't have recensions that you can follow as well as you can with Scripture. I mean,
Right.
Scripture has been really, really carefully done over the millennia.
Yeah.
There's always been somebody carefully copying it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So anyway,
more copies and closer to the actual date of production too, right?
yes. Yeah. And when you get the scrolls and you've got this 1,000-year period, or many hundreds of year period, and they line up, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, sure is.
When things are being handwritten, if it was on a computer disk, it wouldn't last. So it wouldn't last.
We would have never known.
No, they would have changed. They would have changed the format 5 times. There's no way you could go back and copy it.
I can't read.
If anybody has anything on a floppy disk, they know exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's right. WordStar. I can't read something written in WordStar. Come on.
Oh yeah. I had WordPerfect, which was such a good program. So anyway, and we do have evidence in Scripture of some of this stuff that we're talking about too. And Jude actually, you've got 2 passages there. If you read 6 and 14 first.
Okay. So this is in the book of Jude, folks, starting at verse 6. And the angels who did not keep their positions of authority but abandoned their proper dwelling, these he kept in darkness, bound with everlasting chains for judgment on the great day.
Yeah, so that one, that is what they call an allusion. He's alluding to the book of Enoch there. The particular book is the Book of the Watchers.
Okay.
And actually, both of these things come from the Book of the Watchers. So there was a book so Jude was writing in the middle of the 1st century.
Yeah.
And there was a book that I believe they thought was Scripture, and that was the big argument in my thesis. That talks about Enoch finding out, writing about the Watchers, and he's talking about angels coming down and marrying women and teaching people about metallurgy.
Okay. Yeah.
Working with metal.
Yeah.
And about antimony and about witchcraft, actually, magic arts.
Wow.
So these angels came down, and they thought women were beautiful, and they came down and decided to marry them. And one of them said, "Well, God will judge us for this," and they take an oath that they're going to marry these women. And they have this race of giants, is what they actually, some people think they had,
Mm.
in another book called the Book of the Giants.
Mm.
Um, but so then they are locked away in chains. And Peter talks about this, and Jude talks about this,
Yes, that's
about
right.
these angels being locked away. And it's really an alternate view of the fall. It's
Mm.
a different view of the fall. And he's using a book called Enoch. And then in 14 he says this other thing.
Okay. Verse 14, just like Larry said, folks. Enoch, the seventh from Adam, prophesied about them. See, the Lord's coming. The Lord is coming with thousands upon thousands of his holy ones.
Yeah. And so there's going to be a judgment upon these guys when God comes with his angels, with his holy ones. And thousands upon thousands are going to come with God when he comes for the judgment day.
Yep.
And so Enoch is talking about these angels coming down. They say the women are beautiful. They decide to marry them. Then they teach them antimony, which is kind of neat.
Mm-hmm.
Antimony is eye makeup.
Mm.
Because as we say, they may be beautiful, but you can always do a little better.
It's gonna go careful.
Yeah, yeah.
we have to
Careful
stop.
where you go with
We have to
this.
stop the podcast at some point and go out there
Yeah.
again.
But anyway, so he talks about Enoch in this book, in this one, and Enoch is a different book, and that's in a whole series of books called the Pseudepigrapha,
Mm-hmm.
which is there were just a whole bunch of books written. One's called Jubilees, one's called One Enoch, one's called Two Enoch. There's the Testament of the Apocalypse of Abraham, the Testament of Abraham, Joseph, and somebody else. The Testament of the 12 Patriarchs are in there. The Assumption of Moses is in there,
Mm.
and so there's all of these books, and these books were called pseudepigrapha because that meant false authorship.
Mm.
So, and what happened with this whole set of books written in the Inter-Testamental Period as well, Second Temple, they were ascribed to people before Ezra. Because remember, Ezra read the law and I said he found the book of the law. It
Mm-hmm.
turned out I was wrong. But he read the law, and so if there was any book was going to have any value or be considered canonical or authoritative, it had to be written before Ezra
Mm.
found the book of the law, before he read the book of the law. So all of these are ascribed to people before Ezra,
Mm. I get you now.
which is kind of interesting. Eh?
Yes, yes, I get you now.
And Jude mentions Enoch, but also in 10 he also says something else in 10.
Yet these people slander whatever they do not understand, and the very things they do understand by instinct, as irrational animals do, will destroy them.
Yeah. So he says they're slandering the things that they don't understand. And actually, if we read one more verse, he'd say, even Michael, you should read it. Read 11
Sure. Let me get to the real chapter here.
if you can.
Oh, yeah.
And-
Woe to. Sorry. Is that right?
Oh, that's Korah's rebellion. That's not the one I wanted. Although that's pretty darn good too.
Yes.
Balaam's error, Korah's rebellion. They are blemishes. They are clouds. Enoch prophesied of all their ungodly. Oh, I can't find it now. He says, even Michael. Where are we now? Ooh, boy, that's hard to follow.
Hang on a second.
Okay. Look at verse 9. Oh, it was the verse before, not the
There
verse
we go.
after.
That's okay. Hey, we're in the neighborhood. Verse 9, folks. But even the archangel Michael, when he was disputing with the devil about the body of Moses, did not himself dare to condemn him for slander, but said, the Lord rebuke you.
Isn't that interesting?
Yes.
Yeah. So Jude is saying these guys are blemishes at your love feast, and they're saying things that even only wild animals would say stuff like this. And even Michael, the archangel, would not make fun of Satan, but would say, the Lord rebuke you, rather than Michael could have rebuked Satan on his own power. That's
Right.
what he's saying.
Yeah.
Michael could have done it, and he didn't. the rest of us better be a little more careful how we're doing stuff. But he got this from the Assumption of Moses.
Interesting.
Yeah. Now the only unfortunate thing is we don't have this verse in the any extant portion of the Assumption of Moses. We have up to this verse, but we don't have this verse. But everybody says it's there, so I'm going to say it came in the Assumption of Moses. Yeah. So
Now,
kind of weird. But
now, Larry, is the interesting thing for those who would deny that there's any sort of, I'm not going to say value, but that there's any sort of inspiration around these books. Do they kind of struggle with these verses because they're there?
so what they would say. So my teacher, by the way, I'm a registrar, so I'm fine. But when I was doing my doctorate, my teacher said, "Don't say that Jude used this as his Bible. Don't say that Jude used this as authoritative, because you'll never find a job in the conservative circles if you say something like that."
Hmm.
And so, and and then I said, "But what else am I going to say?" He says, "Yeah, I know you got to say it. I mean, it's so obvious you can't say anything else." But the people that don't believe it, what they'll say, because Enoch isn't part of our Bible, it was on and off over the years, and it still is a part of the Bible of the Ethiopic Orthodox Church.
Okay, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not part of ours, and this is not even in the Catholic Bible. So, so what people then say is Jude used these verses because the audience that he was trying to reach used these verses, so he was using their language against them.
Okay. Yeah.
So he didn't think it was inspired, but because they used it, he used it for them. It's a very, very poor thing to do. It's
Huh.
it he actually uses the same kind of language that people use when they quote Old Testament.
Mm-hmm.
He uses a formal in verse 14. He uses a formal prophetic quotation,
Mm. Mm.
and so I say that he used it as part of his Bible.
Right.
And is it a big deal? No, probably not. People don't even read the Bible. They're not going to go and read Enoch. And, and the people I talk to that read Enoch and love Enoch are usually nuts. So
It's not like you're going to open My Daily Bread one day and go, "Oh, well, there's a lovely selection out of Enoch. Oh, I can't
this
find
is a
that."
beautiful selection from Enoch. And look at this piece from Barnabas and this other piece from Maccabees. I'm loving this today. No, no, no,
Not going to
we're not gonna.
happen.
Yeah. And there's so many books out there, right?
Right.
Um, there's a funny little story in the book of Jubilees. Lamech and his wife Bitnosh. No, no, no. He didn't marry her for her name, obviously.
Yeah. Just
And they had a son, um, and they had this issue. They said our son is, and Lamech goes to Methuselah, who was his father, and he says, "I think my wife's been sleeping with the angels because this son of ours is really strange. Like he's luminescent and he's odd. I can't figure it out, but he's not human. He must be part angel. Weird story, eh?" And
I'll
and
say.
Methuselah says to him, Methuselah, this is in Jubilees. Methuselah says to him, "Well, you should talk to Enoch. Enoch walks with the angels. He knows this stuff." And so Lamech goes to Enoch and says, "What's this deal with my wife?" And Enoch says, "Oh, Lamech, my boy, your wife is faithful to you. Um, she hasn't been sleeping with the angels, but your son Noah has been set aside for a special purpose, and that's why he seems so special."
Mm.
Quite a story.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and you get these kind of stories in the Bible too, by the way.
Right.
The only thing is in the Bible, we've had 2,000 years to homogenize them so that they suit our preferences. And these other stories, nobody's been playing with them, trying to make them fit our theologies,
Right. Right.
and that's kind of interesting. Like Jesus has some stuff in the Bible that that's that we've had to say, that's a hyperbole.
Yeah.
When Jesus says pluck out your eyes, he didn't mean it. That was a hyperbole.
Yeah.
I don't know that it was.
If your hand causes you to sin, cut it off, right? That kind of thing.
Yeah. But if your hand really did cause you to sin, you would. But then they'd say it's not your hand that causes you to sin,
Right.
it's your mind.
Right.
Said, yeah, don't go there. But anyway, so there's tons of literature out there. Like not it would you could read it all in a year, or in a month,
Yeah.
if you read it fairly steadily. You could read it all in translation, but there's a lot of stuff that's been written, and there's a lot of development that you see in the New Testament that wasn't there in the Old Testament,
Right.
because it developed through the Inter-Testamental Period.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. This has been fascinating, Larry, because it really opens up that there's a whole sort of almost another bits of culture that we're missing when we read the New Testament, because it's been fed from this intertestamental period.
Yeah, and there's a lot that we can learn if we take the time to learn it, and it doesn't have to break our view of verbal plenary inspiration of Scripture.
Right.
We can still completely believe that what we have before us in the Protestant Bible is what God wanted us to have.
Yeah.
Of course, Peter Flint would say, when you say, is it in our Bible? He'd say, well, it depends on which Bible you're talking about. Because, an Orthodox Bible and a Catholic Bible and a Protestant Bible aren't quite the same.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's actually a thing that they call canon in community, where the community chooses the Bible that it uses, and then that Bible affects the community that uses it.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, fascinating. My friend, that was fantastic. Thank you so much for leading us on that. I'm personally fascinated by this period and all the books. And the fact that you wrote your doctorate on Jude's use of Enoch always has fascinated me too. So.
Yes, well, I wanted to write it on something else, but they wouldn't let me. I didn't have enough background. because the school I went to actually was a real school. They wouldn't let you just write on anything.
That's right. But come on, it'll be fun to write about the fig trees that Jesus curses.
Oh, I was going to write about Satan, something to do with Satan, and they just said no. And then they said, "Oh, I know. I was gonna write about Marcus Aurelius." And the school said, "You do not have enough Roman history in your background to do a doctorate in that area." And then they said, "Can you suggest something else?" And they said, "Why don't you do something on the patristics, which is the church fathers?" And then they got back to me and said, "You actually don't have enough background in the patristics to do that."
Then why did you tell me? Why did you tell me that?
Why did you get me so excited? And they said, "Do you have any suggestions?" And I said, "Well, Jude mentioned this thing in the book of Enoch," and they went, "Oh, that's perfect. You're strong in the New Testament, and you're okay in the Old Testament. We could let that happen. You can make that work." Yeah.
And here you are. Look at you.
Here I am, all these years later, barely remembering what I wrote about because I've been a registrar for all these years.
Oh no, that's fantastic. That's fantastic,
Yeah.
my friend. Well, thanks again, buddy. Folks, thanks so much for joining us this week. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I did, and I just got to sit here and just enjoy Larry's perspectives and hearing about the formation and this period of time. We'll be back next week. We're still not going to tell you what we're going to do because, frankly, we haven't a clue what we're going to do.
Though we may do Esther because one of our loyal listeners has asked for Esther.
Is that because Lynn told you?
No, it was your mom.
Oh, my mom told me. Yes.
Yeah.
Mom, we're doing it for you. There you go.
Now we've exposed her.
Yeah. Yeah.
She may not like that.
Yeah. Well, we didn't use names, but unless there's only one mom. No, I think there's more than one mom in the world. I think we're good. But she's my mom, and you can't have her. Okay. Well, folks, thanks again. Until next time, I was Steve. He was Larry, and this was the Apoco-Larry.